The qualifiers in Jeddah have ended, and I must say it left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth because we saw Leclerc in 4th position, Hamilton in 7th, with a Ferrari that objectively showed itself as the 4th force behind McLaren, Red Bull, and even behind Mercedes, which was not taken for granted because we also saw yesterday that Mercedes seemed behind Ferrari. Instead, today it struggled a lot. But above all, the thing that saddens me, now I'll show you the ranking as well. Before we start, remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos on the channel. And that struggled a lot in the first sector. That's where Ferrari lost everything. In fact, we have the extraordinary pole position of Verstappen, who did a sensational lap, also helped by the slipstream of Tsunoda in the first sector. In fact, he did 1:27 and 2,294 with a first sector in 31, 5 Piastri, second by 10 thousandths from the Dutchman with the best car, came second, but he had nothing to lose since his teammate started 10th, because Norris made a very serious mistake, a mistake you can't afford to make. When you're fighting for the World Championship, according to your teammate, is there in front, he plays with you the pole position, and you make such a mistake in Q3 in the first attempt is not good. A really serious mistake. Then later we will also see why this mistake is so serious. But then, according to Piastri, 3rd Russell, who also did a great lap, 113 thousandths from Verstappen, and 4th Leclerc. But if we also look at the gaps, because we have Verstappen, first then, 10 thousandths, Piastri 113 thousandths, Russell, and then 376 thousandths, Leclerc behind in 4th position. So a fairly significant gap. Leclerc did 1.27.670, and in the first sector, if we also look at the intermediate times, which are those marked here on the side, we see that Leclerc did 31.857, which is also a good time to be a Ferrari in the first sector. But compared to all the others, it is a time too slow precisely in the first sector. 31.5, 31.6, and Leclerc 31.8. A first intermediate time too slow. Also because after seeing the other sectors, 27.7, 28.0 Leclerc is more or less in line with the opponents. In fact, Leclerc is faster in the last sector compared to Russell's Mercedes. And we have Antonelli 5th, Sainz 6th ahead of Hamilton 7th. As I told you yesterday, he is not comfortable with this car. He can't go fast, and he still struggled. He made a mistake. He didn't even do a very good first sector in his last attempt. 8th Tsunoda, who helped Verstappen a lot, then didn't do a very good lap in the end in Q3. But anyway, until that moment, he had stayed close to his teammate, 9th Gasly and 10th Norris. So first of all, I want to show you the mistake Norris made in qualifying, because it's a really serious mistake, guys. There's a mistake you can't afford to make, especially when you're fighting with your teammate and you just need to come first or second with the best car. But you can't make such a mistake. Let's go see them together, and let's see why Norris made a mistake and what led him to make this mistake. Let's say that until this moment, here among other things, Norris was not even at the level of plates in the first curves. So there is also to note this thing here. Then we go on. We see here in this part here, before curve 4, look here, he goes long, guys. He made a mistake in corner entry. It's true that he missed the point of curve 4, but he missed it because he lacked that courage. It's one of those points on the track where you have to push yourself to the limit and beyond. It's here where all the series of snakes, let's say, that you face the first sector where courage and determination are needed, especially in the qualifying lap. And this was missing from Norris. At this moment, he arrived wide at the entrance of curve 4 here, and then he lost control from the single-seater. You see that already. Here he was in pendulum effect already here. He had lost the rear, and then he hooked up to the curb, which being, however, a fairly high curb, does not allow him to manage the single-seater and go straight anyway. Instead, it breaks down the single-seater setup, and so he loses control and goes to the wall, and there, after his qualifications end. In curve 4, Curve 5, really a shame for Norris because he will start behind. But an unforgivable mistake, guys, for a driver who wants to fight for the World Championship. You can't afford to make such mistakes. Already seen other mistakes in the past. Let's remember the qualifications in Bahrain. Let's also remember in the race in Bahrain. The start, in short, many small mistakes. This one serious, this one big mistake, but many mistakes that Norris has made that you can't afford to make when you are fighting for the World Championship. The World Championship. And on this, Piastri must take advantage of it. And he took advantage of it anyway. with the second position. It's a shame for him that he didn't manage to take the pole. But in that case, because Verstappen did a magic, and let's also see there the lap of Verstappen and where he actually made the difference on all the others. Well, Verstappen, look here, let's go ahead. The first thing to notice is definitely the wake of Tsunoda here in front. You see that he really made the difference to make him do that 31.5 in the first sector, which is really something monstrous. A very fast first sector, and that then also allowed to bring home their pole, because Verstappen knew and was aware of not being so fast compared to McLaren in the other two sectors. In the second and also in the third, Red Bull was not so strong compared to McLaren, and especially in the second. So he had to do a magic in the first sector, or anyway have a little help that he messed up. In this case, Red Bull's strategy, excellent among other things. Very good strategy also in making two attempts, the first with new soft rubber with a bit some curve, let's say. Which he did with the rubber, but essentially new rubber piece not fast. And then the second attempt in Q3 allowed him to give even more confidence to Verstappen and improve even more the first sector among other things. He who said curve 1 there is no grip. In this case, then, Tsunoda's slipstream is excellent. In this case, that gives him that necessary speed to gain something. We get here, we see how he faces. He also arrives slightly long. Here, Verstappen, however, manages to rotate his Red Bull well around the curbs and have a lot of speed on exit and in traction. This is fundamental. He does not attack the curbs so much. The Red Bull compared to the McLaren, also because it has a stiffer suspension system than the walking team. But in this case, he manages to rotate around the curbs very well. He rotates the car well and therefore still manages to have good speed. However, the main difference then Verstappen also makes in the other sectors, because he still manages to push. Look here how determined Verstappen enters compared to Norris that we saw earlier in the same images, an abyssal difference. Look how close he gets to the curb and how close he also gets to the wall. And despite instead Norris earlier in his first attempt, we remember because for Norris it was the first attempt. In Q3 he didn't get that close right there. It's not just a matter of talent, but also of the psychological pressure that Norris is suffering. And yet Verstappen doesn't have it. In fact, he manages to push back in his second attempt. In Q3, he still managed to go to the limit. Look here, there really was no more space. Something sensational indeed. Verstappen has a driving style, and it's very evident here in Jeddah that it's out of the ordinary. It's something terrifying and incredible at the same time from my point of view. I mean, if you see it even from the outside, in addition to Dijon board, it's something hallucinating. But even from the outside, you can see that he really pushes more to the limit compared to his opponents. Let's look at other curves to see where he made the difference. Even here, look how close he gets. Let's go on. Here I want to show you. So here, look how close he gets even here to the outer wall. Here, change of direction, and here it is very important to go and take the outer curb there because, and look how Verstappen takes it. He takes it nice and aggressive, decisive, a high curb anyway, and he manages to exploit it to his advantage and therefore make a sensational first sector. Let's go on. This is a curve 13, where he had a bit more trouble on the Friday. With the improved setup, he is about to be able to go faster in this curve, even tighter. You see that he has more rotation. He does not have to correct too much. He goes to recall a bit the steering to make it curve a single-seater. But anyway, all in all, he does it quite well. Well, even here, look how close he gets to the wall on entry. Here where all the pilots also have a lot of trouble. In this case, he does not go too close to the inside. But it's okay because, I repeat, the Red Bull manages to rotate well around the walls. And to the curbs, Verstappen still goes very much to the limit, for goodness sake. Much more even than Norris, as we saw earlier. But it's something impressive that here... Look, guys, wait, no. I mean the curve after. Here it is. Look here how he gets to the limit. I also move to the other side. Look how he gets to the limit of the wall. I mean, he gets really close. I move here and look here. Entrance. Dramatic. Even here he goes to face well, takes the curb in the middle of the bottom, but just enough to make fewer meters, but not be too aggressive in taking too much the rope, and therefore decompose the single-seater. Let's move on. I want to show you also the last curve. Very interesting because it gets very close to the rope point. Look here. Also close to the wall. And then it widens, and in this case, it doesn't even get too close to the outer wall. He did it in the previous attempt. In Q3, where he had also touched the wall, in this case, instead, he goes near. He doesn't touch the wall, and he makes a last curve. Anyway, very, very good. He gets very close anyway. So, Unlike this app, he did it both in his aggressiveness, both in the fact that he manages to go around the curbs, not being too aggressive in taking them, especially the inner cord. The exit cord will exploit this situation because the Red Bull was not at the pole level, to be clear. Guys, if we see a Red Bull there in pole position, it's thanks to Verstappen in this case who made the difference. Just look at the performances of Tsunoda, which is true, he is not the reference at this moment. But if we have a Tsunoda who is 8th and is 9/10 of a second behind Verstappen on a track that turns in 1.27, well damn, there's a reason. And Verstappen had said it's a miracle if we get to 3/4 tenths from McLaren, and they said this on Friday and managed to get pole position on Saturday, so something spectacular. You have to give credit to Verstappen when he does laps like this, because it's something spectacular. On Red Bull, I also want to add two things before talking about Ferrari. So surely Verstappen did a magic in his lap, a pole that is all his. It also reminds me of the pole he also did in Japan, surely in front of McLaren, in this case only in front of Piastri, and a great lap. There is also to say a bit that the wake helped him, so it's not just Verstappen, but in this case also the game of the team that Red Bull did, thanks also to the help of Tsunoda. So this must be underlined. There is also to say that Verstappen also changed the rear wing. So this also helped Red Bull's performance, because in FP1 he used the rear wing with the part near the end plate, where there is also the opening, the drag reduction system. You see, more squared. In this case, they went to round it off to further reduce the aerodynamic resistance and improve the aerodynamic efficiency of the single-seater. So this is another change that Red Bull made during the work. And I want to talk now about Norris' mistake, because Norris made a glaring mistake. We saw it together earlier, and it's a mistake that weighs heavily, even psychologically, for the World Championship. Norris isn't there, he showed it in Bahrain, he's not there mentally, he's not at the level of his opponents. Now Piastri and Verstappen will outrace him. If so, he'll have to make a comeback tomorrow. Be careful and do the qualifying lap immediately. It's important, as I mentioned yesterday, if you wait, it might be too late. There are red flags, someone crashes into the wall, and you risk not making the attempt when needed. And now let's talk about Ferrari. Well, I'm sorry to see a Ferrari in 4th and 7th position, also because I expected something more here in Jeddah, not only on the updates that they brought to Bahrain, and where there were supposed to be improvements right here on the Saudi track, but also because we expected a Ferrari closer to those in front. Beyond the position, it's the gap and how much Ferrari loses in the first sector that worries me. And I'm also worried about the race management, the comeback, because guys, Ferrari struggled to climb from 4th to 7th place, but the podium doesn't seem within reach at this moment. It seems that the opponents and also Red Bull and Mercedes are ahead. This is worrying. It's okay that McLaren is ahead. It's the best car at this moment, is the car to beat, but it's not unacceptable that Red Bull and Mercedes are ahead of Ferrari at this moment. That finds itself 4th force. And the most negative thing, in my opinion, is Hamilton, who starts 7th. It's a track that he never liked. Saudi Arabia, Jeddah. But damn, to even arrive behind a Williams is worrying in terms of gaps. It's really worrying. It's true that the Ferrari is difficult to drive. It's a bit grumpy, nervous. We also saw that there are many corrections to make. It turns little. There is still that chronic understeer that is actually felt in the first sector. But a pity, really, because look at this image here of Hamilton. There is this image here of Hamilton looking at the ranking with Verstappen, Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Sainz and Hamilton 7th. Well, damn, it really saddens me a lot. It really saddens me a lot to see a Hamilton like this, who is bitter, doesn't know what to do to get out of this situation. Sure, a bit, in quotes, his fault, in the sense that he also can't get out of this situation. His teammate is doing better, but I'm really sorry for Lewis, because I hope this negative moment he's living comes out and he can improve. Surely this track here, we like it. He makes many corrections, even more than Leclerc. He prefers a front-focused driving style and handles the unstable rear better than Hamilton, who struggles more. However, it must also be said that Hamilton is working hard to improve, and I appreciate this very much. That is, spending Friday and staying in the pit, and being the last one to leave the pit at the end of the evening, well into the night. It means that Hamilton is giving his all to try to improve the car, and also studying his driving style, improving his driving style, adapting it to a single-seater, and understanding where he can go faster. And these are all signs important, because it means that a 7-time world champion like Lewis is putting himself back in the game. He wants redemption for himself and for the single-seater. So let's see when it will come. Surely this performance made in qualifying is not up to par also, because I remember that in Q2, he saved himself by 10 thousandths or something like that on Aja's Racing Bulls. So really be careful, because then these performances, here they weigh. And I'm lucky to go to Q3. However, he almost risked being excluded from Q2. So these are mistakes that all added up compromise your final performance on the lap, and that is the real problem at this moment for Ferrari, which we see here at this moment. He was leaving the pit with Leclerc. I'll show you some images from the qualifiers of Leclerc, who tries to stay afloat. With this Ferrari, he wants it more focused on the front end. Also, these continuous changes on the front wing to increase the incidence by 3 points, etc. Yes, they are changes due to trying to find more grip with the change, also of the asphalt conditions and also a bit of the tire. But damn, they are changes that make us mean that Ferrari is really hanged, is really at the limit of performance, that is to look for that extra bit. They also make changes to the incidence of the wing, something that other teams do, but less often compared to Ferrari, and Leclerc is trying to give what he has to stay in front. He has already put out a better performance than what the car actually offers. So hats off to Leclerc for the 4th position, because it was not easy to get in front of a Mercedes, that of Antonelli, but it is not enough, guys. In my opinion, we need a Ferrari at least that is in the fight for the podium. And I do not say that then it arrives at the podium, but at least in the fight. That is, you have to be there in front with Red Bull and Mercedes, behind McLaren, constantly fighting for that blessed podium. Otherwise, it's not good. And these performances here disappoint all of us fans. Seeing Ferrari so in crisis, even compared to the opponents, given the expectations that there was at the beginning of the season, it's disappointing. So I would see a bit also the race tomorrow, even if the expectations are a bit lower than I thought, a bit also before, even in the free trials. But this result here weighs a lot, and the qualifications in Jeddah are practically fundamental, because then the race is all a train of cars that follows a story that has in all the drag reduction system. It is very difficult to overtake because they all have more or less the same rhythm, even on the race pace. They are all on a very similar rhythm with McLaren that is superior to the others. The others have a very similar rhythm. Quite similar. So in the end, we really make the difference, the qualifications. And this year, it's like this. The difference is made by the qualifications. Let's also look at the telemetry to make a comparison between the various top teams. And let's see where the difference was made. In this case, Verstappen on the others. And also which team makes a difference in which curve. Let's see, look here, the real difference, as I said at the beginning, is the slipstream received by Verstappen at the beginning of the lap, which allowed him to reach a top speed of 338 km/h compared to 328 of McLaren, 327 of Mercedes, 329 of Ferrari. So about 10 km/h advantage for Verstappen, which allowed him to gain that initial 10th, that then also allowed him to make the pole of 10,000 on Piastri. So let's move on. If we also look at the first curves, this initial stretch here, we see that even Mercedes manages to recover something on Red Bull. Red Bull struggles a bit more, but Ferrari struggles immensely. It struggles immensely also compared to Red Bull and McLaren, obviously. Look here at the delta time. It goes from 93/84 thousandths okay of Ferrari. That doesn't lose much. In fact, if we want, Mercedes loses more at the end of the straight. And it gets to the end of curve 1, 2, and 3, if I'm not mistaken, 1, 2, 3. It arrives with 431 thousandths of difference in 3 curves. In 2 curves, you take 431 thousandths, 4 tenths. In 2 curves, it's unacceptable. On the contrary, Mercedes maintains the same gap of a tenth, just like McLaren Ferrari loses in those 2 curves. Ferrari loses, and it's the traction part, he who is the traction part of the circuit, because if we stop here at 400, we had to 420 thousandths. You do okay, and then we get to the end of the lap. Ferrari recovers in all the rest of the lap, recovers on Red Bull. It's something clamorous. It goes to recover 50 thousandths at the end of the lap. And adding up all the sectors. So it means that the main problem of Ferrari are those 2 curves. It's where it loses. It's where the rotation is missing, especially in progress and in curve exit. And so it can't bring enough speed out and you lose. We also see the speed of progress. Ferrari arrives at curve 1 with very low progress speed, 84 km/h. Exiting curve 2, it reaches 177. That is, guys, these are really low speeds compared to the opponents. Verstappen, 190 km/h. We see Piastri, 180, 181. Also Russell. In short, much less. Ferrari loses the most at the exit. Look here. Zoom in again. This part here is where Ferrari can't make a difference. Is the part of the track from the center of the curve towards the exit where Ferrari can't straighten the wheel and loses 15 km/h, 10 km/h difference compared to the opponents. And all of Ferrari's loss is there in the end, because then in the rest of the lap, it still manages to go quite fast. Certainly not at the level of McLaren and Mercedes, who are still stronger also in the other sectors, as well as Red Bull, but it doesn't lose that much. Behavior. Marcy's behavior is quite similar among the teams and also in braking. We see that the braking a bit and the use of Ferrari's accelerator is always quite similar and a bit different. Compared to the others, you have how the use of the accelerator is also different for Leclerc compared to the opponents. So this is the real difference between Ferrari and the other teams, where Verstappen, Piastri and Russell made the difference on the clock. And I'm also curious to know your opinion about tomorrow's race. Tell me your prediction in the comments, in my opinion. Looking at the qualifying standings, my prediction is Verstappen, Piastri, Norris. I place Norris third because of his good pace. Recovering won't be easy in the race. I think Norris will finish third or fourth. It depends a bit on how the race will go. Surely the pace is good, but passing won't be easy. For him, however, that is his goal. Obviously, Norris must definitely make the top 5 tomorrow to avoid embarrassment. Guys, with the McLaren being the best car, you can't afford not to make the top 5 starting from 10th. However, we will see. Certainly Leclerc will aim for the podium starting 4th. I find it hard to believe he will, but it's not impossible either. So it will depend a lot on the start, how he might manage to overtake Russell, what the pace of the Mercedes is. I see Ferrari battling with Mercedes tomorrow, in terms of pace anyway. Verstappen is uncatchable in my opinion, up there in the front. Because he will try to maintain the gap on Piastri. Piastri will attempt to attack Verstappen, but in my view, Verstappen will successfully defend against Piastri. It will be an interesting race, similar to Suzuka in Japan. Share your prediction and thoughts on Ferrari's qualifying. How do you see tomorrow's race? Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos on this channel. I update you daily on all car news, Formula 1, and Ferrari. Check out the related videos. That's all for now. See you in the next video.